So there's some things that we need to understand about this word black. And one of the things is that it has some hidden side effects that most people may not recognize that is affecting them if they are unaware of what is associated with the word black. And so, what I want to do is, I want to demonstrate some of the hidden traumas and side effects that people may be experiencing and are experiencing by associating themselves with this word and the way they view other people who are associated or identified with this particular word. So, what I want to do is, I want to start by reading from a passage from Richard B. Moore's book, The Name Negro, The Origin and Evil Use. And this will give us kind of some context to start the video and get into showing the hidden effects and traumas that the word black may be having upon you.
The important thing about a name is the impression which it makes in the minds of others and the reactions which it invokes through the association of ideas.
And so it's the important thing about a name is the impression. The impression is the imprint that it makes on the mind of others, and the reaction which it invokes through the association of ideas. So the association of ideas is what other people associate things with when they hear a particular name, right? And we're going to get into that and get a full breakdown of exactly how that works. So the association of idea is extremely important. It's extremely important to understand this process because it's something that happens unconsciously, right? It's not something that most people are aware of. And so what I want to do right now is I want to do an exercise. And on this part right here, I'm going to need you to participate in this particular exercise so you can get a full understanding on exactly how association of ideas works and how it affects you in your day-to-day worldview and your day-to-day life and the way people see you and the way you see other people. And so what I want to start with is I want to start by making two columns. And what we're going to do is we're going to start inserting words into these columns. So if you have a piece of paper and you make two columns right now, and it's going to be a number of rows in the columns. And what we're going to do is we're going to start inserting words that you are going to associate with the headings of these columns. So the headings of these columns are going to be positive and negative. And so the pairs of opposites that we present, you're going to be the one to place them in their respective columns, right? So let's start with our first pair of opposite. And the first pair of opposites that we have are wisdom and folly. And so what we're going to do is we're going to place them how we associate these words into their respective columns, right? And so we have wisdom and folly, and most people are going to associate wisdom with something positive and folly with something negative, right? That's going to be for the vast majority of us. So the next pair of opposites that we have are friend and enemy. So where would you place friend and enemy? Most of us are going to place friend in what we understand to be positive, and enemy is going to be something that we associate with negative. Now we have love and hate for our next pair of opposites. And most of us are going to place love in one column, which is under the positive, and hate under the negative. Right? Then we have happy and sad. Where's that going to go at? Happy is going to go in the positive, sad for most of us in the negative. Active and lazy. Well, active is going to be positive. Most people want to be active. And then you have lazy. That's going to be associated with something negative. Giving and greedy. Well, a giving person will be something we associate with positive. Greedy is something that we typically deem as negative. Harmless and dangerous. This is our next set of polarized opposites. Well, we're going to put harmless. Obviously, we're going to think of that as something positive. And dangerous is going to be something negative. You know, this is for the vast majority of us. Rich and poor. Well, where are we going to place rich at? In the positive Poor, we're going to see that as something negative. Beauty and ugliness, where would you put that at? Well, ugliness, most people are going to place that in the negative column. Beauty is going to be placed in the positive column. What about truth and lie? Where does that go? Well, lies, most people are going to associate that with something negative. And truth, okay, that may be a positive thing. This is for most people. What about polite and rude? Where do you put those at? Well, you're going to put polite in the positive. Rude is something that's going to be associated with negative. What about civilized and savage? Well, most people are going to associate being civilized with something positive and savage with something being negative, right? Let's keep going. Keep going through the exercise, and you're going to see how it unfolds as we continue going. We're about 3/4 of the way done. What about intelligent and ignorant? Is it a positive thing or a negative thing to be intelligent? Is it a positive or a negative thing to be ignorant? Right? We can fill those in. For most people, intelligence is going to be filled in or in the column of positive, and ignorance in the column of negative. What about gentle and violent? Where do those go at? Gentle for most people, positive. Violent for most people, negative. Strong and weak. How do we view those? How do we look at that? Strong and weak. Is it positive to be strong, or is it negative to be strong? Most people, it's going to be positive. They're going to look at that as a positive trait. Weak is going to be looked at something that's negative. Let's keep going. What about peace and war? Do we want peace? Is peace with positivity, or is peace with negativity? What about war? Is war with positivity or war with negativity? Right? So most of us are going to place peace in the positive and war in the negative. Okay, now what about light and dark? Here we go. Light and dark. What does that fall into? Light with negative or light with darkness or light with positive? Dark with positive or dark with negative? How are we going to place these? Right? Most people are going to place light and positive, dark and negative. This is most people. What about good and evil? Which one are those categories going to be filled with? Good and evil. Is good a positive thing, or is evil a positive thing? Well, most people, good is going to be positive. Evil is going to be a negative thing. Let's keep it going. It's about to get spicy. What about angel and demon? Angel, obviously, for most people, positive. Demon's going to be the negative. Here we go. What about God and the devil? For most people, God is going to be positive, and the devil is going to be negative. Here we go. What about white and black? Where do those go? Think about that. Think about that. For most people, white is going to go into the positive category, and black is going to go into the negative category. And now here's one thing that I want you to really pay attention to, is that if you really paid attention, if you went through this particular exercise, what you're going to notice is that it didn't require any active thinking for you to categorize these particular words. As soon as I said the patterns, or as soon as I said the pairs, you had an automatic association on where you would place these in these particular columns. You didn't have to sit there and think about it and analyze it. You already knew, right? And that's because there's an unconscious aspect of your oneself that does this and stores information, events, and experiences for you, and it does it automatically. And this is the part of people that operates the vast majority of their life, the automatic consciousness or the unconsciousness aspect of people, right? And so throughout your life, what has happened is you've unconsciously accepted meanings and ideas behind each of these words that we've categorized. And that's one of the reasons why you're able to categorize them without thinking about them. But the truth of the matter is none of these words in themselves mean anything. If I say the word God, or if I say the word, let's say the word, to make it simple, let's say the word beauty. Beauty is just a sound. When I say it, beauty, it's a sound, but it has ideas compacted inside of that sound and packaged inside of that sound in order for someone to be able to deliver an idea to another human. And so you can understand and communicate with somebody else. And so there's ideas and concepts packaged into these sounds that we make called words that trigger related ideas that are associated with whatever idea is being communicated. And so how do these associations get transferred to us? How do they get built? How do they become developed inside of our psyche? Well, one of the ways that they become built and developed and understood and accepted is through friends and family. And this is starting from being a child and developing and growing up. When you're in your younger years, receiving and accepting transferred information from your parents and friends and other people and relatives who are around you, transferring ideas into you, into your psyche as you learn to talk, walk, and see the world. And through whatever's transferred into the child, that is how they begin to see the world as they begin to construct it based off of those building blocks that they have received. And so in many instances where a lot of the ideas associated with a lot of the words, where they originate from, are people who are coming from the top, what we would call elite, or people who are founders and creators of cultural trends. For example, people who created the English language. There's ideas and they're associating it with a particular sound. Once you get other people to agree upon that particular sound and that idea, then we can begin to pass it on, right? And then it becomes to take on a life of its own. And so let's look up the word black. And we're going to look at this in the Merriam-Webster dictionary and see what it has to say about this particular word.
Black, thoroughly sinister or evil, wicked, indicative of condemnation or discredit, connected with or invoking the supernatural and especially the devil. Very sad, gloomy, or calamitous, marked by the occurrence of disaster, characterized by hostility or angry discontent. Sullen, distorted or darkened by anger.
Right, and you can see all the meanings that are associated with this word starting really from the 1300s, passed on generation after generation. Right, it still has preserved a lot of the meaning that it has always had since the creation of this word. And so also one of the ways that ideas and meanings of words and concepts and associations of particular ideas get passed on are through things like the media. Right? When television and radio came along, those were extremely powerful tools for people to help propagate and perpetuate a certain worldview and a way of looking at the reality outside. And these are from people who understand how to engineer reality. We're not talking about the everyday average person. We're talking about people who actually understand the workings of reality and who know how to manufacture, modify, and influence the way people perceive the reality. Right? And that's one of the reasons why it's called the television program. A program is dealing with modifying the way humans think, which can be used for good things or bad things. It's just a tool, depending on whose hands that tool gets into and what intentions they have. And so the unconscious mind has this way of receiving information, and then it has little columns set up nice and neatly within the psyche of a human, and where it places things where they go in order for you to recall them or to use them for your everyday life. And that's why you're able to place them in the columns when I ask you, where does it go, into positive and negative? because it automatically has it stored in the way that you have accepted the ideas that are related to those words and the way that you see them through the lens that you see the world. And so if an idea is continuously presented and repeatedly presented, and you've been repeatedly exposed to this particular idea, and you do not challenge the idea or reject the idea, then the unconscious part of yourself will assume that this is a correct thing. And it will place it nice and neatly in its filing cabinets for you to use in your everyday world and the way that you perceive reality. And so one of the ways that the colonists were able to manufacture a worldview and a particular ideology around the slaves is recorded in the same book that we're reading from.
By this name, Negroes, African slaves were thereby branded as bestial and savage, innately inferior, fit by nature only for slavery.
So you can see that it says the Negro was branded. And when you brand somebody, that means you place an identifying marker on that person. And the way that they place that marker on that person is they associated the skin color of the slave and said that that was black, although it was brown. And then they also gave the slave the name Negro. So when you have the association of the name Negro as a name that is being called and identified with by the slaves, people begin to develop these particular ideologies around who these people are. And this is what ends up leading into the people being less than human and subhuman and all these types of ideologies that come afterwards.
And indeed ordained by God himself for perpetual slavery.
And you have to understand that's a key part in here. It's not that this is just for any particular type of slavery. This is for perpetual slavery. That was the intention. Perpetual servitude. That means you serve, your children serve, and they keep serving. They keep serving. It's the place, this particular group of people who've been branded with black, place them at the bottom, and all the other folks fill in between. All the way until you get to the top.
A legalized system of racial segregation was established which stigmatized the Negro as unfit for human association. And every type of propaganda was employed to prove the Negro was morally degenerate and intellectually incapable of being educated. Living constantly under the domination and contempt of the white man, the Negro came to believe in his own inferiority.
Right, and this is a key part right here. It says that the Negro came to believe in his own inferiority. The super key right here. Because what has happened? You have all these people ambushing you from every side, sticking it down your throat and pushing it and injecting it into the way that you think and telling you from all angles. Propaganda, you're enslaved, or these people are enslaved. They have nowhere to go. You have no power. And eventually what happens is the slaves began to believe in their own inferiority. You see, it's one thing that happens if you tell somebody something negative and then they brush it off and say, that don't have anything to do with me. Right? You can call somebody ignorant, ugly, dumb, and if they say, oh, well, that's that person's opinion, and they brush it off and literally keep it moving without a second thought, that's one thing. But it's a different thing when you tell somebody they're dumb, ignorant, ugly, and then they internalize it and then begin to believe in it. This is where their worldview begins to become altered and their reality is altered and the way that they see themselves changes. And the way that they think other people see themselves changes. Right? You've gotten into the program, to the psyche of that person. This is what's happening here, what you're seeing. This is what's happening. And so as a result of that, then you get after generations of generations, all these things being compiled and just slammed onto these particular people, from the name to the way that you the colonists reference the skin color, all the people around them infusing it. They begin to tell each other that. Then what happens? As they have more children, it begins to perpetuate. You remember that the intention is a perpetual slave, not an indentured servant. Until you get all the way up until today's time, and then you have things like this.
Which doll is the black doll? And which one is the white doll?
That one.
Which doll is the pretty doll? Which doll is the nice doll? Which doll is the bad doll? Which doll is the nice doll? And which doll is the bad doll? And why is that doll pretty?
Because she's white and he has 2 eyes.
Which doll is the ugly doll? Why is that doll ugly?
Because he's black.
You see that? Understand the psychology behind creating a perpetual slave. Everything that's loaded in that term black continues to get passed on from the people who created it all the way on to when they attached it to the slaves, until the slaves begin to pass it on all the way up until today. It's still been grabbed onto. Negro, black, those things are held onto. And it creates, because the kids, they understand the concepts and the ideas behind it, because they've been influenced by the media and the way other people still use this word black. Right? That's why we did the columns, because it's tied into there in the unconscious part of the mind. They're not thinking about it consciously. That's why you didn't see them hardly do any thinking when they're getting ready to pick out the particular doll. Which one is the ugly one? They point right to it. That one. Why is it ugly? Because it's black. Not because of anything particular. The nose is bigger, or the nose is smaller, or the lips are bigger, or the lips are smaller. None of those. It's because it's black. And in their mind, if they've been watching and being indoctrinated in American culture, black is loaded with anything negative under the sun. Any and everything negative under the sun. And we use it all the time to describe negative situations. Things like the black market. We can keep going, but we're not going to go into that right now. I just want you to see how it filtered down. Nobody sat there and taught these children that you're black, or you're this color, and you're black and you're ugly. This is something that these children have come to understand on their own, unconsciously.
Which doll looks most like you?
Like me.
Yeah, which one looks like you?
And that one.
Okay.
That doll.
Now, what is that saying to that child? She had to ask the question, hold on, which one, like me? What is that saying to that child? The black one? They already said that it was the ugly one or the bad one. And then which one looks like me? And they point to that same one. And then they start to make these connections.
Can you show me the doll that you like best, or that you like to play with?
This one. I like that one.
Okay.
This one.
And can you show me the doll that is the nice doll? And why is that the nice doll?
He's white.
And can you show me the doll that looks bad? Okay. And can you and why does that look bad?
Because it's black.
And why do you think that's a nice doll?
Because she's white.
And can you give me the doll that looks like you?
Now you can see how she just slid that doll over, almost like, get this thing out of here. A self-hatred that has been infused and passed on from generation to generation. Why? Because he already told you. The Negro came to accept and believe in his own inferiority. Once he became inferior and felt and believed it, the only thing that you can teach the children that come after is to be inferior. That's it. And what happens is, after the emancipation happened, the people who are labeled black never completely dealt with this problem. They have never completely dealt with this issue of the psychological issue and the trauma that has occurred and that continues to get passed on. And so while they went off to do other things, own businesses and all these other things, become politicians, they have not dealt with that particular problem. And this is how you still get these children out here repeating these cycles over and over and over again. And what happens if you never deal with, if the person never deals with it and reflects on it and removes themselves entirely from this entire concept of race and being black, they will continue to pass on that inferiority complex to the next child, thus doing exactly what the people set up in the beginning, the colonists, of creating a perpetual slave. You can't be a free person with a slave name. And you can't be a free person feeling inferior. And holding on to ideologies that a slave master infused in you. It just doesn't work.
Why do you want that skin color?
Because I don't know. I don't know.
Now you see him, he says he didn't even know why. Once again, unconsciousness. Accepted patterns of belief. He already has an association with black being bad and white being good. Just like we went over in the column.
So show me the smart child. Okay, why is she the smart child?
Because she looks like me.
Okay. Show me the mean child. Okay, why is she the mean child?
Because she's way darker.
Okay. Show me the good child. Why is she the good child?
Because I think she looks like me.
Now understand that this concept is understood by everyone who, especially in Western society. But it's the reverse end. Because when you understand what white has been demonstrated to mean, then you'll understand it has the reverse effect of people who are accepted the word black. And that's why she's able to look at it and do the opposite and point to the color that looks more similar to her and say, that one is the smart one because it looks like me. And the other one is the dumb one because it's darker, much darker. These are the same concepts, right? But just different people having a different experience.
Show me the bad child.
Now, if you notice that, let's go back some more. If you notice, as soon as they said the bad child, you can see the eyes automatically shift to that color. We're talking about unconscious, conditioned pattern behavior.
Show me the bad child. Why is she the bad child?
Because she's a lot darker.
Show me the ugly child. Why is she the ugly child?
Because she's like a lot darker. Dumb child.
Okay, why is she the dumb child?
Because she has black skin.
Right, and so I hope you're understanding this, and I hope that I'm clear enough in driving this point home and why it has a hidden traumatic effect on associating with that name black. And that is the intention. And people can make all types of justifications for keeping that name Black, and that's okay for them. But I'm telling you, there's a certain amount of people who are going to have to remove themselves from that particular name in order to clean up your psychology and engineer and modify the way you see the world and your reality, so you can then pass on something different to your children. Otherwise, the pit is wide open, and there's many people that continue to fall into it, because the intention behind the slavery is perpetual servitude, and that's one thing you cannot forget.